Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
It was the kind of morning that feels like a funeral even when nobody's dead yet. Gray sky, wet pavement, and the low mechanical groan of a building that's breathed for too long. The factory floor smelled the same as it always did, like oil, sweat, and second chances that never quite worked out. My name's Frank Delaney, and I'd walked through that rusted back door every weekday morning for the past 40 years. 40. Not 39 and a half, not 38 with a long vacation, 40, to the goddamn day. And today, for the first time since Jimmy Carter was in the White House, I wasn't going to clock in again. I remember standing by my locker, staring at the faded picture of my kids taped on the inside of the door. Rachel was maybe 9 in that shot, Tommy 7. Back when they still looked at me like I hung the moon. Before the degrees and the distance and the fucking entitlement set in. I closed the locker slowly, like I was sealing up a piece of me I wasn't sure I'd get back. Then I grabbed my old red toolbox. It had my name scratched into the top, crooked and shallow, and headed down the line. They threw me a party, if you could call it that. The guys from my shift stood around a folding table covered in a wrinkled plastic tablecloth from the dollar store. Someone had brought donuts, stale, likely from yesterday, and a gallon of gas station coffee that tasted like burnt tires. They got me a plaque. They spelled my last name wrong. Delaney, not Delaney. No one noticed. Hell, I didn't even correct them. What was the point? You work 4 decades for a place, and they can't even bother to spell your name right. That's about the size of it, ain't it? Still, there was some kind of pride buried underneath it all. We were men who built things. Bent steel. Pulled 16-hour shifts when the young guys called in sick because their cat had anxiety or some bullshit like that. I stood there, shaking calloused hands, patting shoulders, pretending I wasn't already halfway out the door in my mind. Then she showed up. Rachel. My daughter. Hair pulled tight, lips even tighter, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck. She didn't belong here, didn't want to, but she came anyway. I should have known it wasn't for me. She didn't even hug me. Just strutted over to the front of the table and clinked her glass like she was the goddamn CEO giving a quarterly earnings speech. I just want to say something, she started, smiling that fake smile she uses when she's about to gut somebody and make them thank her for it. My dad worked his whole life at this place. 40 years of hard work. And when I think about that, I just want to ask, what do you have to show for it, Dad? No mansion. No business. Just grease on your hands. You worked your whole life, for what? Nothing. Nothing to show. The room went dead silent. A few guys looked down at their shoes. One of the supervisors actually winced like someone had slapped him. Tommy was standing by the door, arms crossed, jaw tight. But me? I just looked at her. Held her stare. Then I reached over, cut a slice of that dry-ass sheet cake, walked it over, and handed it to her. No candles, I said quietly. But you can blow out whatever hope you brought with you. She blinked. Stared at me like she couldn't believe I wasn't hurt. I was, of course. I just wasn't gonna give her the damn satisfaction. Rachel's the kind of person who needs to win every argument, even the ones no one's having. And me? I've learned there's more power in a man who says nothing than one who shouts just to be heard. She left not long after that. No goodbye. No thanks. Just turned on her heels and walked out, high heels clicking like a clock running out of time. Tommy stayed behind and helped me load the toolbox into the bed of the truck. He didn't say much either. He didn't have to. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table with a cold beer and an older pain. Not the kind you treat with Tylenol or a heating pad. The kind that settles into your chest and sits there like it paid rent. I reached under the cabinet and pulled out a dusty cigar box. Inside, wrapped in yellowed paper, was a safe deposit box key I hadn't touched in 20 years. Not since before the kids moved out. Not since their mother passed. I held it between my fingers for a long while. Then I picked up the phone. Dialed a number I'd only ever used once before. Yeah, I said, after the voice answered. It's Frank. Get the papers ready. It's time. And, just like that, something shifted in me. Not anger. Not revenge. Something colder. More permanent. I'd spent my life building things: machines, toys, treehouses, futures. But now? Now I was ready to tear something down. Brick by brick. And not make a sound while doing it. I remember that graduation like it was yesterday, even though my knees were younger and the sun a little less cruel back then. It was a hot day in June, one of those humid Midwestern scorchers where your shirt sticks to your back before you've even had your coffee. I wore a collared shirt I hadn't taken out of the closet since my wife's funeral, and I had to borrow a belt from Tommy because mine was fraying at the buckle. I sat in the third row from the back, squinting at the stage through cheap sunglasses and even cheaper seating, surrounded by proud parents who looked like they'd stepped out of some bank commercial: shiny watches, expensive shoes, smiles made of straight teeth and private money. And then there was me, hands still stained with grease from a late shift the night before, boots I didn't have time to polish, holding a paper program with my daughter's name printed next to the words summa cum laude. Rachel had always been the smart one, at least that's what the teachers said when she was in school. Gifted, they called her, though I never liked that word much. It always sounded like something you could give back if you changed your mind. She tested into everything early, skipped a grade, took community college classes while she was still in high school. And I was proud, I was damn proud, but I'll tell you something no one likes to admit out loud. Pride can rot into distance if you don't check it now and again. When her name was called, the crowd clapped, and a couple of her friends screamed her nickname, Ratchie. She walked across the stage in heels too high for comfort, tossing her cap tassel like it was a baton in a parade, and hugged the university president like she'd known him for years. She looked sharp, confident, bulletproof, like the world couldn't touch her even if it tried. But when they told families to come up and take photos, she didn't wave me down. Didn't look my way. I stood half up, thinking maybe she just didn't see me, but then I saw her posing with her boyfriend's parents. And just like that, I sat back down and stared at the stage like it owed me an explanation. Later that evening, we were at the diner down by Route 9, the one with the cracked vinyl booths and the jukebox that still plays Springsteen if you kick it just right. She agreed to meet us there, more out of obligation than anything else, and she brought that same boyfriend, Eric or Evan, something smug and sharp like that with his rich boy jaw and gold-plated opinions. Over greasy burgers and cold fries, Rachel dropped it like a hammer. "I'm moving to Chicago," she said, picking at a Caesar salad like she was afraid of calories. "I've got an offer from a firm. Not some entry-level assistant nonsense. Actual work. Strategy. Finance. Real influence." I nodded, biting back the urge to ask if she'd ever even read a lease before. "That's great," I said instead. "I'm proud of you." She smiled politely. Not warmly, just politely. And then she added, "I want to make something of myself, Dad. I don't want to end up stuck in a shop covered in oil." That's when I felt it, the sharp twist, the sting hidden in her words like a rusty nail in your boot. She wasn't just talking about herself. She was talking about me, about my life, about the work that fed her, clothed her, got her through all those goddamn AP courses and extracurriculars and college tours. "You think I was stuck?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. Just took another bite of her salad and shrugged. Tommy was there too, picking at onion rings and doing what he always did, keeping the peace without saying much. He didn't judge her. Never has. That's just not in his bones. But I could see something flicker across his face, like maybe he understood something I hadn't until that moment. Tommy had never left home. He finished high school, took a few trade classes, and started helping me out around the house. He never wanted a corner office or a fat paycheck. He built his own workshop out back behind the garage, and over time, he started picking up odd jobs, handmade shelves, custom cabinets, little things most folks overlooked until they saw how good he was with his hands. He made just enough to get by, and that was enough for him. He liked the slow. He liked the real. Rachel thought he was wasting his life. She told him that once, straight to his face, during a Thanksgiving dinner that ended with her storming out and slamming the front door so hard the glass cracked. "You're scared of doing more," she said. "You're just like Dad, hiding in comfort." But the truth is, Tommy was never scared. He just didn't need to be loud to be certain. Over the years, Rachel called less and visited even less than that. When she did call, it was rushed. Deadlines, flights, promotions, always something. And I'd ask about her life, and she'd give me bullet points like she was reading off a resume. She never asked about mine. Not really. But she sent me a card one year, for Father's Day. It was clean and store-bought, not handwritten, and it said, "Thank you for teaching me what hard work looks like." Underneath that, she scribbled a line, "I just want more than that." I kept it for a while, taped it to the fridge until the corners curled and the ink started to fade. Eventually, I threw it out. Not out of anger, just out of the quiet understanding that some words aren't meant to be kept. And look, maybe I didn't do it all right. Maybe I didn't hug her enough or say, "I'm proud" loud enough or buy her the things her friends' dads could. But I worked 47 straight years, no vacations, no sick days, not a single one. And I thought that meant something. I thought being steady mattered. Rachel always wanted to be the storm. And Tommy? He was the roof. And I guess the question I'm left with now is this: when the storm finally comes, who ends up dry? Because I'll tell you something I've learned the hard way, it's not always the one who yells loudest that wins. Sometimes it's the one who waits, watches, and remembers. It was a cold Tuesday in March when I sat down across from the lawyer's desk, the kind of morning where the wind rattles the windows just enough to remind you that the world doesn't care what day it is or how heavy your heart feels. The office smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and stale ambition, and the walls were lined with framed degrees and dusty books that looked smart, but probably hadn't been cracked open in years. Across from me sat Jeff Langston, my lawyer for over a decade, the kind of guy who wore suits too big and never finished his coffee, but who'd kept my affairs clean and my plans tighter than most. He adjusted his glasses like he always did before asking a hard question, the bridge of his nose already red from them being pushed up too often. "So," he said slowly, carefully, like a man walking across thin ice in church shoes. "You're sure about this, Frank? You're leaving it all to Tommy? Every last cent?" I didn't flinch, didn't even blink. I just nodded and tapped the folder in front of me, the new will, the updated one. The one that cut Rachel out completely, like a tumor that kept coming back every few years, growing more entitled and less grateful. "Every penny," I said, my voice dry and steady. "The savings, the pension, the land, the rental place down on Elm, even the tools in my shop. All of it to Tommy." Jeff exhaled like he was hoping I'd say something different. Like maybe I'd suddenly change my mind and become the version of a father that Rachel probably told her friends I used to be. "She's still your daughter, Frank," he said finally. "I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen what she said to you, how she treats you. But legally speaking, this kind of thing can get messy. People contest these things. Families go to war." I leaned back in the chair and stared out the window at nothing in particular. A bird was struggling against the wind, wings flapping hard, just to stay in place. Fitting, I thought. "Blood doesn't mean trust," I said. "It never has. People like to think family means automatic loyalty, like it's some damn reward you get for sharing DNA. But family's about who shows up. Who stays when it's hard. Who gives a damn when there's nothing left to gain?" And Tommy? He showed up every damn time. I remember one winter, maybe 5 years ago, when the pipes froze under the house and I thought I'd have to call in a plumber. Tommy was there by the next morning, crawling through the crawl space with a heat gun and a busted flashlight, swearing under his breath, but never complaining. I offered to pay him, and he just laughed like I'd insulted him. "I live here too, Dad," he said. "Even if I don't sleep here." That's the kind of man he became. Quiet, solid, dependable, not flashy, not loud, but the kind of person who, if the world fell apart, you'd want standing next to you holding a wrench and a plan. Rachel, on the other hand, hadn't visited in over a year. Last I heard, she was in Phoenix, chasing some job that paid six figures but cost her every ounce of peace she ever had. She'd gone through 3 promotions and 2 boyfriends in as many years, and the last guy she brought home was twice divorced and talked like every conversation was a negotiation. When she wasn't working, she was posting curated photos online of vacations she probably couldn't afford, always smiling but never real. There was a hollowness behind her eyes the last time I saw her, like someone who'd been playing a role so long, she forgot how to just be a person. And no, I don't hate her. That's the thing people don't understand. This wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about vengeance. I'm too old to play petty games. I don't want revenge. I want peace. And sometimes, to get peace, you gotta close a door and throw away the goddamn key. That's what this will was. A closed door. A choice I made not out of anger, but out of clarity. We signed the papers that day, Jeff and I. He still looked uncomfortable, like he was sitting on a truth he didn't want to say out loud. But he stamped everything clean and locked the new documents in the file. It was done. And the weird thing? I slept like a baby that night. First full night's sleep I'd had in months. There's something about making a decision that sticks, something about not leaving the back door open for someone who's only ever walked through to take. Of course, nothing stays quiet forever. A week later, Tommy came by with groceries. He does that sometimes, no fuss, just shows up with a bag and a shrug. I told him about the will, sat him down and laid it all out. He didn't look happy. He didn't look upset either. Just tired. She's gonna blow her top when she finds out, he said, pouring coffee like it was just another Tuesday. She might, I said. But that's her fire to deal with. Then it happened. Rachel found out. I don't know how. Maybe she saw a notice. Maybe she hacked something. Maybe she just sensed something was shifting. But 3 days after the papers were signed, she called. No greeting. No soft entry. You changed the will, she said flatly. You left me out. I did, I replied. It wasn't easy, but it was right. You're making a mistake, she hissed. I won't let this go. And then she hung up. I stared at the silent phone in my hand for a long time, not because I was shaken, but because I wasn't. There was no guilt, no ache, just a sense that the reckoning had begun. She wanted a meeting, and for the first time in years, I was ready to give her one. The door flew open so hard it knocked the damn wind chimes off the hook, and for a second, I thought maybe the wind had finally snapped the front porch loose after all these years. But it wasn't the wind. It was Rachel, and she was already halfway through the living room before I even looked up from my chair. I didn't stand, didn't flinch, just stayed right there in that old brown recliner, the same one she used to crawl into after school when she was 9 and too proud to admit she still wanted to sit with her dad. She hadn't been in this house in over a year, maybe longer. It looked smaller around her now, like success had stretched her too tall to fit into the world she came from. Her heels clicked across the hardwood like a metronome set to rage, and when she stopped in front of me, her chest was heaving like she'd sprinted from the parking lot even though I knew damn well she drove that black SUV she loved bragging about. She pointed a finger at me like I was an employee she was about to fire, and her voice came out sharp enough to cut drywall. You're unbelievable, she said, eyes narrowing with something that wasn't quite anger but something older and deeper, betrayal maybe, or pride cracked wide open. You really think this is okay? That you can just write me out of your life like I never mattered? I didn't say a word. Just looked at her, calm as I could manage, and reached for the remote to turn the volume down on the news. It was some story about a storm in Texas or a fire in California, some natural disaster far away, something that still somehow felt quieter than what was happening in my own goddamn living room. You think I don't know what this is about, she continued, voice rising like she was winding herself up tighter with each word. You think because I've worked my ass off, because I left this dead-end town, because I didn't stay here scraping grease off my fingers and calling that a life, that makes me less worthy? Still, I said nothing. Not yet. You learn a lot by letting someone run out of rope. I survived you, she hissed, and that's when I finally looked her straight in the eyes. Do you hear me? I survived you. You were never there. Not really. You were always at the factory, always too tired or too distracted or too broke to be the kind of father I needed. That one landed harder than I expected, but I kept my face still, my breath even. Because that wasn't the first time she'd said something like that. But it was the first time I felt like she actually believed it. You want to talk about survival? I said, finally, quietly but sharp enough to stop her pacing. You think being your father was a vacation? Your mother died when you were, what, 10? 11? And I didn't run. I didn't drink myself stupid or leave you with strangers or crawl into some hole of self-pity. I kept the lights on. I worked doubles and cooked dinners and sat through school conferences full of people who looked at me like I didn't belong in the same room as my own damn daughter. You think that's enough? She snapped, taking a step closer. You think showing up counts as parenting? No, I said. But it counts for something. She shook her head, looked around the room like she was trying to find something else to blame. Her eyes landed on a photo of me and Tommy fishing out by the reservoir, both of us holding up fish too small to brag about but proud as hell anyway. That set her off again. And he gets everything, she spat, pointing toward the photo like it was a crime scene. Tommy? The guy who couldn't even finish community college? The guy who still lives in this neighborhood like it's 1975? He's your golden boy now? That golden boy has been here every damn time I needed help, I said, my voice flat, even. He patched the roof, he brought me groceries when my back went out, he never asked for a damn thing but gave whatever he could. She laughed then, bitter and loud. You're giving away everything I should have had to a leech. That's when I stood up, slow but steady, knees popping like old furniture, and I looked at her the way I used to look at machines that had stopped working, like maybe I could fix it, but knowing deep down it was already too far gone. I owed you a childhood, I said, low and heavy. I gave you that. You want a payout? Go to Vegas. She blinked like I'd slapped her. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, and finally, she just let out a frustrated growl and turned to leave. But before she could storm out the door, someone else spoke. I think that's enough, Rachel. The voice came from the corner, and we both turned. It was Joan, my sister, who'd been sitting quietly on the old love seat, watching the whole damn thing unfold like she was waiting for the exact moment it would all fall apart. She stood up, slow but certain, and walked toward Rachel with that same tight-lipped expression she wore at funerals and weddings, when she knew people were pretending and couldn't stomach it anymore. You had a father who loved you, Rachel, she said, voice sharp but not cruel. You just never loved him back. Rachel stared at her like she didn't recognize the woman, like the words weren't in English. I gave everything to that man, she whispered. No, Joan said. You gave him expectations. You gave him conditions. Love isn't a transaction. You can't collect interest on it. Rachel didn't respond. She just turned, walked to the door, opened it, and for a second, I thought maybe she'd slam it behind her. But she didn't. She just left it swinging in the breeze like a thought unfinished. After she was gone, I sat back down in the recliner. It creaked under me. Same as always. Joan came over, handed me a glass of water, and patted my shoulder like she used to when we were kids and the world felt too heavy for one pair of shoulders. She'll come back, she said. Maybe, I said. But if she does, it won't be for the right reasons. That night, I opened the bottom drawer of the desk and took out a sealed envelope with Tommy's name on it. I handed it to him the next morning without a word. He turned it over in his hands, confused. Open this, I told him, if she ever tries to fight the will. Then I walked back to the kitchen and poured my coffee like it was any other day, even though we both knew it wasn't. Not anymore. The courtroom was too clean, too quiet, too damn cold for what it was about to hold. And I remember thinking as I walked in that my daughter was about to dissect my entire life in a room full of strangers in buttoned-up suits and government chairs that had never seen a real day's work. The judge looked tired, probably had 100 cases lined up just like this one, families chewing each other up over what dead people left behind. I wasn't there in body anymore, of course, but I'd prepared for this. I'd left everything just the way I wanted, and if there's one thing I know about Rachel, it's that she doesn't take no for an answer unless you carve it into granite. Tommy sat on one side of the room, hands folded, shoulders stiff under that second-hand suit we got tailored at that little place on Main. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want the fight. Hell, he never wanted anything but peace, the kind you earn with honest work and a quiet life, not the kind dragged into courtrooms by blood and bitterness. He looked over at Rachel once, but she didn't meet his eyes. She was seated on the other side, immaculate as always, in some slick black blazer that probably cost more than my first car, with that same polished mask she always wore when she knew she was losing control, but refused to admit it. When the judge asked Tommy if he had anything to offer in defense of the will, he hesitated. Just long enough to make everyone in the room feel the weight of it. Then he reached into his inside pocket and pulled out the envelope. My envelope. The one I gave him that morning after she'd slammed the door and left the air thicker than diesel smoke. He handed it to the court clerk with a nod, and the silence that followed was the kind you don't get many places outside of funerals and slow verdicts. The judge opened it carefully, like maybe he expected it to explode, and inside was a photo. Just one. No explanation. No caption. It was Rachel, age 9, standing on our back porch, holding up a crooked little birdhouse she'd made with Tommy one summer when the air was thick with the smell of cut grass and cheap paint. Her hair was in messy braids, her cheeks covered in dirt and joy. She was smiling, not the tight, rehearsed smile she used as an adult, but a real one, big and bright and unguarded. The kind of smile kids give before the world teaches them how to hide their teeth. Then came the letter. Typed, not handwritten, because I didn't want anyone pretending they couldn't read my old chicken scratch. The judge read it out loud, his voice steady but heavy, like he knew this wasn't just paper. It was the last conversation I'd ever have with my daughter. Dear Rachel, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're fighting for my money, then I failed you twice. Once as your dad, and once as a man who believed love was enough. You were always smart, always fierce. And I never wanted to dull that in you. I just wanted to be part of your world, even when it looked nothing like mine. But somewhere along the line, we stopped speaking the same language. I talked in hammers and hands, and you spoke in deals and deadlines. That's no one's fault, not really. But somewhere in between, I think we forgot how to love each other without trying to win. So here's my last word. I gave what I could. I gave my time, my strength, my silence when you needed it most. But I will not give my legacy to someone who sees it as a debt owed instead of a gift given. Forgive me or don't. That's up to you. But I hope maybe one day you'll understand. And taped to the back of the letter was a small USB drive. The judge, probably expecting legal documents or financial records, plugged it in. The courtroom dimmed slightly as the screen flickered on, and what came next didn't need any commentary. It was me, 5 years ago, sitting on the back porch with a gift box on the table and hope in my hands. Rachel was there too, standing stiff as a board, arms crossed, sunglasses too big for her face like she was trying to hide even from herself. I was trying to give her something, an old music box that used to sit on her mother's nightstand, something I thought might bridge the gap between who we were and who we'd become. But she didn't take it, didn't even look at it. Instead, she laughed. Not a soft, embarrassed laugh, but a cold, hollow one. She told me I was dead weight, that I had nothing to offer her, that the past was just dead wood clinging to her future. The footage ended. Nobody said a word for a long time. The judge ruled in favor of Tommy within the hour. Rachel didn't protest, didn't argue, didn't even blink when the verdict was read. She just sat there, hands still and quiet in her lap, like something inside her had finally cracked in a way you can't tape back together. Later, outside the courthouse, she sat in her car for a long time. Not crying, not yelling, just sitting. And when she finally moved, it wasn't to start the engine. It was to pull a worn leather notebook from her bag. The kind with a cracked spine and dog-eared pages filled with half-finished thoughts and unopened wounds. The cover read, in small, careful lettering, Dad's Factory Story. She opened it and flipped past drawings of conveyor belts and tool schematics and little sticky notes that looked like dialogue. Bits and pieces of a man she'd never really tried to understand. And on the last page, she'd written something in her own handwriting, new, raw, ink still drying. Maybe the storm just needed to understand the roof. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for that storm to slow down. But that's not my story anymore. Some people only miss you when your silence costs them something. And some silences echo longer than any word ever could.